I'm just about to post this video and then found out that Ford just released a joint message with Howard Lutnick saying that they will be looking to renew their agreement on USMCA. And in response, Secretary Lutnick agreed to officially meet with Premier Ford in Washington on Thursday, March 13th, alongside the United States Trade Representative to discuss a renewed USMCA ahead of the April 2nd reciprocal tariff deadline. In response, Ontario agreed to suspend its 25% surcharge on exports of electricity to Michigan, New York, and Minnesota. So makes this video a little bit outdated, but it still is very viable and very important to watch. Enjoy it. Have yourselves a good one. I'll see you later.
Oh, what a day has it been? Oh, tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Smear, smear, smear. Finger pointing going everywhere. It's a big, wild time. Doug Ford is figuring out the definition of FOFO. Screw around and find out, they say. This is what's happening right now. We are witnessing it live between Donald Trump and specifically Doug Ford at this point in time. It's getting ugly for workers. It's getting ugly for Canadians. It's getting ugly for Americans. It's getting ugly for just the regular day person. And we're just begging our politicians to pull their heads out of their butts. Just figure this out. That's all we're asking for here. I don't need more elbows up BS propaganda. I need more. Let's get this thing diplomatically figured out. That would be awesome. We'd enjoy that a lot, wouldn't we? We have a lot to get into. We have Donald Trump bringing some serious tariffs back on Ontario specifically, and then, or at least industry that's disproportionately affects Ontario. And then we have the response, and then we have our politicians weighing in, and just, we're going to be covering it all and what's happening. And then we're going to break down all the responses and what it means for Canada and our future. It's a little confusing. It's a little wild, but don't worry. Just join me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon on this wild ride we call Canadian politics, folks. We will enjoy this together. We know this morning, Doug Ford said, I don't care if you're pulling tariffs off of Canada till April 2nd. I don't really care. You're still putting it on aluminum steel. I don't really care if you're bluffing or not bluffing. We're going to keep our tariffs on electricity. So Donald Trump this morning said, okay, you leaving them on? Well, this is going to be my response. He says, based on Ontario, Canada placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the United States, I've instructed my Secretary of Commerce to add an additional 25% tariff to 50% on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States from Canada, one of the highest tariffing nations anywhere in the world. Okay, we'll leave that out. This will go into effect tomorrow morning, March 12th. Also, Canada must immediately drop their anti-American farmer tariff of 250% to 390% on various U.S. dairy products, which has long been considered outrageous. I will shortly be declaring a national emergency on electricity within the threatened area. This will allow the U.S. to quickly do what it has to do to be done to alleviate this abusive threat from Canada. If other egregious long time of tariffs are not likewise dropped by Canada, I will substantially increase on April 2nd. The tariffs on cars coming into the U.S., which will essentially permanently shut down the automobile manufacturing business in Canada. Those cars can easily be made in the United States of America. And he goes on to say at the end here that Canada will go on to be an amazing 51st state, be part of a great nation. You can keep Canada, but you'll be part of the United States. Yada, 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 yada. So that was a pretty wild threat that came through, and not even so much a threat. He's going to be putting now 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum, effectively kiboshing the industry in Ontario. So Doug Ford does what Doug Ford does and hops on MSNBC to plead his case with the American people.
I apologize to the American people that President Trump decided to have an unprovoked attack on our country, on families, on jobs, and it's unacceptable. Let's work together. Let's get to the table if he has issues, and let's sort this out. You see the market tumbling, consumer confidence is down, and if he continues on with this, assembly plants in Michigan will shut down, and around the country, whoever makes autos, and as well as businesses, they're going to hurt. And these pensions, when the market goes down, it's going to affect people's pensions. So I'm not too sure why he continues to attack his closest friends and allies, but we need the American people to speak up. We need those CEOs to actually get a backbone and stand in front of them and tell them this is going to be a disaster. It's mass chaos right now. That's what we need.
I don't know who's in the room there with Doug, because clearly there's lots of wind happening, lots of people walking around. Hopefully they figure that mic out. That was rough to listen to. But here he is. I don't know what Trump's thinking. What is going on? What is he like? I just don't get what it's only hurting American workers as much as it's hurting us. The markets are down. People are going to lose their jobs. Why does he keep doing this? This is nonsense. I just don't get it. And if you remember correctly, Ford threatening to turn off the electricity to the United States. You remember that? Remember Mr. Sunshine Baby saying that is an act of war and the NDP losing it in BC over him saying that? Well, it kind of is. And Donald Trump had a response to that as well. He said, why would our country allow another country to supply us with electricity even for a small area? Who made these decisions and why? And can you imagine Canada stooping so low as to use electricity that so affects the life of innocent people as a bargaining chip and threat? They will pay a financial price for this so big that it'll be read about in history books for many years to come. My friends, the battle's getting ugly. Ford is not backing down. Our Canadian political class is not backing down. Donald Trump is clearly not backing down. And us in the middle are the ones who are going to be paying the price for it. You had Mark Carney chime in, saying President Trump's latest tariffs are an attack on Canadian workers, families, and businesses. My government will ensure our response has maximum impact in the U.S. and minimal impact here in Canada while supporting the workers impacted. My government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect and make credible, reliable commitments to free and fair trade. And we can expect that from Carney Liberal. We can expect that from a Doug Ford Liberal. I mean, conservative, whatever he is, definitely not a conservative. These people so badly want this fight to go on. They so badly want to just fight, elbows up. That's all they want to do. And there's such a lack of understanding of what is happening. Or there actually is a very huge understanding of what's going on that they want to hide it. And they're willing to use Canadians as cannon fodder in the process. I just want to show you one last response. Came from Pierre Poilievre. Common sense conservatives strongly condemn President Trump's latest unjust tariffs targeting Canadian steel and aluminum workers and manufacturers. These tariffs cannot in any way be justified and are yet another betrayal by the president of the long friendship between Canada and the United States. I'm calling on the government to immediately bring in retaliatory tariffs to respond to this unjust act and to protect Canadian steel and aluminum workers. If President Trump is applying 50% tariffs on our steel and aluminum, and then Canada must hit back with 50% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imported from the United States. Our message to the U.S. administration must be clear. Do not mistake our kindness from weakness. We are a strong, proud, and sovereign country, and yada, 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 yada. I am also calling on the Liberal government to further defend our steel and aluminum workers, listen to the leaders in our industry, and take additional action to combat illegal dumping and unfair trade practices by China. At least someone's semi-close to the issue here. That's nice to see. Finally, I'm calling on Mark Carney to reverse his plan to impose a massive new industrial carbon tax on Canadian steel, and yada, yada, yada. He goes on to hate on Carney. But there is no response I've seen from any of our significant leaders that is giving me encouragement. Nothing that is giving me hope for the future. All I'm seeing is we're just going to fight back, and it just is going to end in a very, very bloody bath. I understand the temptation to want to react, to want to retaliate. I get it. I understand, because that is our human nature. Someone attacks us, then we want to attack them back. But this rhetoric shows that there's such a lack of understanding of what is going on in our country. My friends, we're in the middle of a huge cultural revolution. I don't know if we even fully realize it. When those things happen, uncertainty happens in the markets. So imagine for me for a second, okay, folks? When a real war takes place and the area that war happens in, it's not good for the economy. People are sheltering for their lives. Things are blown up into smithereens. People are left having to pick up the pieces afterwards. It's an ugly scene where people lose their livelihoods for a chunk of time until they're able to rebuild and get back to where they were before the war erupted. Though we don't have a physical war happening around us, we are witnessing a tariff war, a trade war, which can have some serious impacts on people's lives. Like a real physical hot war, it's not good for the economy of the area that it's taking place in. Not good for people. People lose their livelihoods, and it'll take time to rebuild their lives back from the ashes. And that's currently what we're witnessing. We're witnessing Canada being the centerpiece of this battle between the World Economic Forum, globalists, China, and America. And we are so programmed with propaganda here in this country that we are failing to see what the real issues are. We're going to say elbows up. We're going to say Trump bad, America sucks. And we haven't heard a peep from our politicians about China. Poilievre, I'm happy, made at least one mention of China in his post. That gave me like a little bit of encouragement. But people are so afraid. China's put tariffs on us, folks. And there's significant tariffs at that are actually impacting huge portions of our economies here in this country. And we've heard zilch about it. Why? Because Trump bad sells better. We're a little too cozy with China. The influence that they have, the way they intimidate Chinese Canadians who have fled and left China because of the communist regime that's there. They don't get to leave the intimidation. They don't get to leave the trauma that they're trying to leave behind because our government allows them to come here and intimidate them. Our government allows CCP agents, whether officially or unofficially, to come here and intimidate Chinese Canadians. Not a peep about it. And do not get it twisted. This whole trade war is based on that and the globalist elite. 100%. Trump hates the globalists. The Liberal Party just put forward the biggest globalist of them all. And it's so important. And I get it and I understand that people are so propagandized in this country that it makes it hard for the opposition party to say what needs to be said. But the courage has to come regardless. Unfair trade practices are being practiced by China. China is shipping fentanyl precursors to our country. China is actively trying to subvert Western democracy. Yet we're going to continue this whole Trump bad rhetoric, unfair tariffs. Is it unfair, not fair? I don't really give a crap. There is a significant threat happening in our country, and that is the reason these tariffs are being levied against us, and we are not taking it seriously. I look to the Vancouver Sun, where it says, Canadian governments fail to stop money laundering because they want the cash, says law prof. And this is an article written by Douglas Todd discussing a theory by a professor out in BC. And this is what they have to say. Politicians in Canada are mostly pretending they're desperate to crack down on money laundering, according to the stark, well-constructed argument of a University of Calgary law professor, Sana Ahmed. Sorry, I forgot. Not from BC, from Calgary. My fault. Ahmed says the real reason federal and provincial governments have not made a significant dent in the laundering of dirty money is basically because they like the cash in the economy. The idea appears controversial initially, but it makes eminent sense upon further reflection. Once it is in the system, dirty money behaves just like clean money, Ahmed says in a bombshell chapter in the new book, Dirty Money, Financial Crime in Canada. Why did the BC government of a decade ago tolerate what came to be known as the Vancouver model of money laundering, she asks. After all, many people knew drug cash stuffed in hockey bags was being laundered by being used to gamble at BC casinos, with much of it ending in the mostly luxury Canadian real estate, she said. And why did it take American law enforcement officials, not those in Canada, last year punish the white-collar criminals inside U.S. branches of the Canada-based TD Bank? The answer is the same. Despite the posturing of politicians and the establishment of dozens of anti-money laundering agencies in Canada, Ahmed says politicians aren't keen to prosecute laundering because they want the capital, which props up the economy. The globe's massive laundering network can only be understood by asking the question, who stands to gain, says Ahmed. And just a last point for fun. The blight of international money laundering is making headlines again this year because U.S. President Donald Trump is urging Canada to tighten its borders to fentanyl, asylum seekers, and unexplained money. But former President Joe Biden had also chastised Canada for its weak anti-laundering regime, with this country becoming known for its snow washing. An estimated $45 billion to $113 billion is laundered here each year, according to Criminal Intelligence Service Canada. Folks, this is a huge issue. And obviously, this is one prof putting out very compelling theories of what is happening and why it's not seriously taken care of, not seriously attacked by our political class here in this country. It's because our economy is propped up by it. And that's a very disturbing thought to have to think about. Instead of providing value, and a lot of this goes back to the Trudeau government. However, this has been going on for decades at this point. But Trudeau's government has essentially highlighted the issue with their lack of thought and action with our economy. We provide very little value. When our number one commodity or one of our highest exports is our real estate, that's a problem. When we have become one of the money laundering capitals of the world, that's a problem. Or when we put a thumb on the scale against our oil industry and say no to the likes of Japan, Greece, Germany, asking for our natural gas, that's a problem. We have been put in a very precarious situation leading to these tariff wars. And Donald Trump's easy to point the finger at because he's loud, he's orange, and he's saying he's going to make us the 51st state. Very easy to make him the enemy. But this has been going on a long time. And different American administrations have had issues with it in the past, but quietly. This is the first time someone's making it very loud and known of how frustrated they are with Canada. But the only problem I have with Donald Trump is he's being way too ambiguous, making it easy for people to hate him here in Canada because he's not been overtly clear what the real issues are, leading to shows like ours trying to clarify what has been happening in this country. Because we see the S&P down to 55.46, erasing all the gains since September of last year. Real people are being hurt by this. Their retirements are being hurt by this. And I get it. Big radical things need to happen if you want to see massive change. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. And I understand that we're going to feel pain regardless. But I'm also not happy how both sides are handling this right now. Not stoked about it. Because we've talked about it, how linked with China we really are in so many ways. We've talked about how Carney has numerous business interests tied up with China. We have Trudeau admiring China's basic dictatorship. We have Trudeau meeting up with Paul King Jin, a British Columbia businessman who would go on to become a central figure in the province's money laundering inquiry. We have members of the United Front being at liberal fundraisers, being in photos with Justin Trudeau. We have Mark Carney allowing Chinese paid-for media to be at his events. And we have as well as members of Trudeau's cabinet of the past who have had mortgages with Chinese state-owned banks. And Champagne refinanced his mortgages back in 2020 because it made it look bad because China was getting aggressive with us at the time, wanted to avoid a distraction. This Liberal Party and our political elite are way too tied up with China, Beijing, and the World Economic Forum. And right now, Trump has a huge axe to grind with those people, and they happen to be the ones running our country at the moment. And they're not going to go away without a fight. They say they're fighting for Canada. No, they're fighting for themselves. And they're just using Canadians as the cannon fodder in that fight, being pumped into our country right now. They don't really know what's going on and how gross and seedy the underbelly of what's happening under our politics really is. And all I'm asking is for one politician in our country to have a little bit of courage and call out China directly and what they're doing and how they're undermining our democracy. And I know it's hard because you're going up against the propaganda machine. That's tough. We saw what they did to Danielle Smith, who was the one person who stood against all this BS initially. You saw what they did to her, but I really commended her for her courage. But we're going to keep a close eye on this, see how all this transpires. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.